So that's why we believe, Jackie and I, that children really need somebody who's going to be there for them all 3 years, that they can count on somebody to help them make it through. So they start studying about Europe in 8th grade and international travel. They start studying with us at that time as well. We go to Amsterdam. We go to the Anne Frank House. Another big theme through all of our trips is a study of the Holocaust. Again, there's more information on the website on how we organize that. But the main reason for starting in Amsterdam is many kids want to see the house where Anne Frank wrote her diary. And then from there we go to Brussels, and then Paris, and then London. We use a travel company called EF Tours, and I'm happy to say we've had the same guide for the last 6 years. 6 of our 7 trips, the same man has been able to come with us all along and has created a strong bond, and kids will get off the plane and he'll say, oh, you've got to be in a Speedo. You look just like your sister. And the kids love it that this man halfway across the world already knows who they are. And again, being the firstborn and a paranoid overachiever, I've written a handbook again for how to travel to Europe and what you do when you're there, and they have a little guidebook that they fill out as they go along. Those are the cornerstones of our trip. Of course, there's the mini grant program, and we have AHA professional development at our school. But today I'd like to focus just on having you hear about the trips and what we do with the students through that. We continue to travel. Many people again say, why do you take kids, why do you travel? Couldn't you do the same thing here? But as you'll hear from in a moment, and when Claudia talks about the pride she has that she stood at the top of the Empire State Building, the top of the Washington Monument, and the top of the Eiffel Tower in Paris, and she's a girl from the west side of Denver. Many of my students go to high school and their teachers say, no, you haven't gone to Europe. So of course, one of the requirements of my classes at the end of the year is you have to create a scrapbook. So they pull out their scrapbook and they show their teachers, yes, look at me. I'm at the top of the Eiffel Tower, I'm at the top of the Empire State Building, I'm at the top of the Washington Monument. So it really gives the children a much-needed boost in their education and an inspiration to stay in school. As you'll hear from Kenneth, when he started out in 6th grade, he wasn't even sure he wanted to go to college. And now he's got some big dreams. I won't give away his dreams yet. We also continue to involve the families, the family involvement. I couldn't do this without parents. Any of you hear that parents from low-income neighborhoods aren't involved? That's a lie. We have parents all the time who come and help us out. We couldn't do this without them. In fact, one parent even asked Jackie for marital advice. That's how close we get to some of our parents. Thank goodness she didn't ask me. I wouldn't be the one to do that. And the hands-on experience of learning. You yourselves know, those of you who have traveled, it's very different to hear about how good Brussels chocolate is. But it's another thing to be standing in the Grand Place of Brussels eating a Brussels chocolate. Or the time somebody says, boy, those snails are great in France. And there you are, as Mia was, the first one to pull that body out of the shell and eat it and say, I'm the first one of the group who ate a snail. You can imagine how much that adds to a child's experience in education. And of course, it opens doors for our kids. I remember one girl who told me once, I used to dream of moving to Pueblo, and now I want to go to Hong Kong. Of course, the price of those dreams sometimes comes high for us teachers who organize this. I had a parent who came down the hall one day crying. She said, my daughter's moving to London, and it's all your fault. You hadn't taken her there and showed her how cool it was. She'd be in Greeley. I said, well, that's part of it, but it opens doors for our students, and it's always wonderful for me to see how they respond to the teaching that we give them. And now I'd like to introduce Jackie Arriaga. She's been my partner in crime for many years. She's our work program coordinator for KEEP, and she's going to talk to you about the very important aspect of how we get there. Of course, in a neighborhood of 100% government assistance, parents don't just sit down and write out a check for their kids. And so I'd like to introduce Jackie Arriaga.
Thank you. One of the things that make our trip unique, not just the fact that the children have to be with Miss Olson. Thank you. I usually don't speak in public. One of the things that makes it unique is not just the fact that they have to take a class with Miss Olson, or they choose, I shouldn't say have, but they choose to take a class with Miss Olson to study about DC and Europe. But they are also all required to work a minimum of 50 hours. Now, those 50 hours are included as like a requirement, and it's something that they cannot just look at you and say, I don't want to do this. They have to do it. So some of the jobs that we have in our school consist, they're there at 6:15 in the morning. Kenneth here used to show up sometime at 5:30, and I told him, stay in bed a half hour more, show up at 6 o'clock. But at 6:30, we would open a cafe for the teacher. They run a school store. They do concession, which means they sell candy after school. They run school dances, and due to budget cuts, now they are sweepers at our school. One of the things that they learn about that, one of the reasons we have them work, is not just to establish relationship, but it's also to introduce the world of work ethics to the children. This isn't just, oh yeah, I'm doing cafe, oh yeah, I'm doing this and talking to your friends. No, this is a real job, and we try to tailor it just like a real job, which means they have to apply for their jobs. Then they have to be interviewed, and that interview is usually taken place by the children who have the 8th graders. There's 6th graders coming in, they get interviewed. As they are interviewed, they're asked what kind of things they like. I remember one child who lost the opportunity to sell candy, which is the concession sales, because she came into her interview and she was chewing gum. And the person was interviewing said, we don't want someone like that. Chewing gum in an interview, that's not very professional. So they get that instilled into them. They also learn very quickly that just like in the real world, if you do not show up to work, and I'm their boss, by the way, and I'm just a very difficult boss, but if they do not show up to work and they don't call in to let me know, or they don't text me, just like in the real world, they get fired. And it's a little wake-up call to them, because they're like, what do you mean I'm fired? Yes, you didn't show up to work, you didn't call me. So we'll talk about it, give them a warning. And if it doesn't improve, then we have to we have to talk about whether this trip is for them or not. Because if they want to go on this trip, they have to be willing to work. We had this one child, Leticia. And Leticia, she wanted to go to Europe. That was her dream. But Leticia had a hard time getting up in the morning to come to work. So we worked around and said, okay, we'll give you a job after school. But then Leticia had a hard time staying after school because she wanted to hang out with her friends. So her mother came in and had a meeting with me and said, look, I've been able to scrape up all this money for Leticia. Let me just pay her trip. And I told the mother, well, I'd be more than happy to take the money, but if your child does not fulfill the 50 hours, you will lose your money because there are no refunds, and your child will not go. And her mom says, wait, you're telling me that I have all this money and you're still going to require my daughter to work? And I said, yes, that is part of the requirement to travel with us. So she did what all parents do, and she marched upstairs to complain to our principal. Fortunately, our principal knew our rules, and she backed us up. And so the mother came down, and she said, well, okay, well, I talked to Leticia. She said she's going to work. I said, that's fine. I'll take your money, but remember, there are no refunds, and your daughter must report to work. I then suggested, why don't you go home, talk to Leticia, and come back with a decision. Well, she called me that evening and just said, she's not going to work. And so Leticia didn't go to Europe. And it was kind of sad, but I think that's a lesson. And up there it says, it's a journey. That's part of it. What lesson would Leticia have learned had we just said, well, yeah, we'll take the money, you'll go. There wasn't that lesson of, in life, and what we tell our children is, it's great. I saw this thing here about dreaming. I think it's wonderful as adults. We encourage our children to dream, but I think the next step we take is we have to tell them how to make those dreams come true. And sometimes those dreams, to make a dream come true, you have to be willing to sacrifice, which means you have to be willing to sacrifice and not go to those dances and work the dance instead. That means you are sweeping a room when all your friends are hanging outside on a nice sunny day. It means you have to put up with Miss Arriaga and Miss Olson and all the requirements and everything. But if they're willing to work hard, their dream comes true. I cannot tell you how many times a child will look at me, and especially at the top of the Eiffel Tower, and they look at me and they said, Miss Arriaga, I was ready to quit. I just couldn't work anymore, but I'm so glad I didn't quit. I now know that by working, this is what I can do. So once again, it's not just dreaming, but working hard to make your dreams come true. The other thing that I was caught off guard one year, we have a child, and our children, when they work, they actually have quite a resume. And I would be more than glad to write, references. We're always used as references for our students. By the time they leave us, most of the children have now managed, done inventory, filled out reports, interview, all sorts of different jobs. And there was this one child named Robert. Robert was a pretty tall guy, and he came in kind of late into the program, and he was a little nervous that he wouldn't raise his money. So he said to me, well, Miss Arriaga, I know I'm working with you, and I know I'm working all these other things, but I'm going to go and I'm going to try and get a job on my own at Walmart. And before you say anything, Miss Arriaga, I know I'm going to pull my pants up. I'm not going to sag. I'm going to be tucked in. I'm going to take out all the piercings, and I'm going to, when I meet the manager or whoever's hiring, I'm going to put my hand out, look him straight in the face, and introduce myself. I said, wonderful. And he said, don't worry, I'm going to use my best handwriting when I fill out my resume. I go, that's even better, Robert, So next day, Robert comes back, and I said, how did it go, Robert? I said, well, he said, I sat down with the manager in his office, and he was looking over my resume, and he said, yeah, this is wonderful. You know, we could use you. And then he stopped. He said, you're only 14